Okay, the first question for the candidates. The methane leak in Porter Ranch has been described as the equivalent of the Gulf of Mexico Deepwater Horizon leak on land. As a state senator representing this community or any others that may be similarly affected, what actions would you take on day one of your term to ensure that residents are not exposed to any future toxic contaminations due to fossil fuel extraction? And we'll start with Mr. Pollack.
How much time?
You got 1 minute.
Okay. Well, and I've been talking about methane for long before the Porter Ranch disaster. I know, being on the Air Pollution Control Board, that how horrible greenhouse gas methane is, and we need to regulate it more. So not only do I want to take care of the problems like the gas storage leaks that they've been having up in Aliso Canyon, I want to start clamping down on the methane emissions that are happening at dairy farms, at water treatment plants, at landfills, and cattle ranches as well. It's surprising, methane is a very potent greenhouse gas, and it's something that we haven't paid enough attention to, and that would be what I would want to do in the first day in office, is to start an initiative to start clamping down on methane emissions in general.
Ms. Resident.
Yes. We the people gave a monopoly to this utility. And the first thing I would do is hold the feet to the fire of the gas company to make the people in that community whole. In addition, that same first day, it's really pretty outrageous that they were allowed to self-regulate and failed in their trust to the public. And I would provide some kind of legislation that would ensure that they will never again be allowed to self-regulate. And I don't know exactly what that would look like, but it cannot continue the way it is. Secondly, I would ensure, I think that Fran Pavley's bill that she introduced just recently about testing every single well, there's 115 wells, and there was controversy about whether the whole place should be shut down. Wells cannot be used until they've been tested. And if it's not done before then I would make sure that every well is tested to be able to ensure that there is no additional escaping, and retrofitting and gauging for early detection must be immediately implemented there and elsewhere.
Thank you very much. Mr. Stern.
So I'm writing that legislation she spoke of. It's actually in the LA Times today that SoCal Gas has come out and been secretly lobbying against the bill. And the basic premise of the first bill, it's a 2/3 vote. We're trying to go convince Republicans that you must inspect before you inject, right? So environmental policy is very ethereal for many people. Those of us who are not surfers and who don't put our bodies in the ocean every day and expose ourselves to all this, it doesn't make sense often. People in the valley don't often connect to the pollution that feels so real to many of us out here in Malibu. But this incident has grounded us, right? You have 3,000 families that have been relocated. So I'm pushing this forward right now. You're not going to have to wait till the next election cycle for this to happen. We're doing that work right now. But I would raise one other issue. Beyond shutting down these leaky wells, beyond reforming the Public Utilities Commission, we need to look into the history of why Porter Ranch was developed where it was, and why all those first-generation home buyers weren't told that they were putting their homes that they were buying, maybe their very first home, were sited right next to a gas field. So we're going to look deeper into that issue, and I'm going to be doing that further as your senator, but throughout the rest of this week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Mr. Stern's bills are important to pass, but they are extremely minimal first steps. They don't do what it is that the residents are calling for, which is to permanently shut this down. And I have a plan to permanently shut this down. This facility can hold 87 billion cubic feet. The Public Utilities Commission says that we need only 15 billion to be able to ensure system reliability. So already we can reduce from 87 to 15. And then with a little bit of reduction in our use of natural gas, we can bring that down to 0. 15% or 25% of our natural gas gets used for generating electricity. And if we can have a big push for solar rooftops, we will reduce our electricity usage. We'll be able to bring that down. 40% more goes towards heating our homes and businesses. If we convert our gas appliances to electric appliances, we'll bring our gas usage down more. We will shut this down completely and permanently. Thank you.
All right, thank you. The next question is from Vice President. In your estimation, is the Department of Oil, Gas, and Geothermal Resources, better known as DOGGR, up to the job of protecting California residents from the perils of fracking or other fossil fuel-related disasters that threaten air, water, public safety, and/or potential earthquakes? And as a state senator, do you support regulation or banning of fracking and other well stimulation techniques?
I'll answer the second part first. I do support regulation disallowing fracking. Fracking is unacceptable and environmentally dangerous. As far as understanding the ins and outs of DOGR and exactly what the limits of its authority is, I cannot honestly tell you standing here today that I know all of the ins and outs of that regulation. But I do know that it is critical, given our earthquake vulnerabilities and given all of the other environmental issues that we have and the importance of our protecting of our environment, we must empower our regulatory agencies to be able to completely shut off and not allow any kind of destruction of our coastline and ensuring that our pipes and all of our systems, injecting and otherwise that we use, that are either shut down or made completely safe to the satisfaction of the population.
Okay.
So I wrote the legislation, SB4, that currently regulates the practice of fracking in this state. And a lot of our gaps right now in state law are a result of the Cheney amendments during 2002 when an energy bill was written to exempt fracking from the Safe Drinking Water Act. We're still trying to plug those holes. Our agency, DOGR, has been a captive agency of the oil industry for decades. And not until Senator Pavley and I started digging deeper into this issue did we realize that those minding the store were really in bed with the industry. Right? So this is a serious problem. And fracking is just the tip of the iceberg. Right? Now we're seeing in storage, there's issues. Underground injection control, we found benzene in the water supply going into agriculture in the Central Valley. So this is part of a much greater systemic problem that for all the environmental progress we make in the state of California, what's happening underground is very secret to most of us. So I support a full overhaul of DOGR. I tried to push through a moratorium and sat across the table from Governor Brown trying to push this legislation through. He shut that down, but I'll keep persisting as your senator.
All right.
I have been a big force for a long time fighting for a moratorium on fracking and succeeding in getting that to be the state party's position. Unfortunately, SB4, by giving permits for fracking, has had the effect of overturning our efforts to have local moratoriums, and so we need to get that changed. And on DOGR, DOGR has a dual mandate to regulate petroleum, but also to promote it. And we shouldn't have the state promoting oil and gas. The oil and gas companies are quite capable of promoting themselves. What we should be doing is changing that law where the law says, believe it or not, that DOGR should do everything it can to maximize the amount of oil and gas extraction. Change one word, change maximize to minimize. We should be conserving, not trying to use every drop we can.
Thank you.
And I also believe that there's too cozy a relationship between DOGR and the oil and gas industry. I think that's widely known. And I worry a lot about the aquifers we have outside of Moore Park, where a lot of our water comes from, and we don't know where that poison is going that they're injecting into these wells. So there's a big disconnect there with water quality and what's going on with fracking, and that's something that really needs to be clamped down on. But in the long run, however, I think in order to stop fracking altogether, we have to stop using petroleum products as consumers. As long as we keep demanding it, and we demand 3 times as much as we extract in California, there's going to be these type of practices, and it's going to be a constant battle to regulate them. So my big push as your senator will be transitioning to a hydrogen economy and completely getting rid of the use of hydrocarbon fuels that are being burned and allowed to emit into the atmosphere.
Next question will be directed to Mr. Stern. Sticking with the environment, what is your opinion with regard to Governor Brown's plan to construct the Delta tunnels? Would you support this as a state senator or oppose the plan, and why?
Well, I think the plan is, again, way too big of a budget, just like the high-speed rail. It's a multi-billion-dollar effort that's not actually going to fix this drought. In my opinion, the way to deal with our water supply challenges are all local. We can't continue relying on imported water, whether it's from the Delta or from the Colorado. Right? We know in this era of climate change that we're going to be facing limited supplies from beyond. But right now, under our feet in the San Fernando Valley, we have a groundwater aquifer that's been polluted by many small businesses out in the valley and all kinds of other industries. But we have an opportunity to clean up that groundwater, pump it back up, run it through reverse osmosis, and get it back down there through the water bond that I helped write. And then we will have a sustainable local supply for a decade to come. So to me, it all starts local. We can't be looking up to the Delta because frankly, we're at the end of the pipe and the farmers on the way down here, they're going to get to that first, right? So it's an agricultural fix, but it's not a fix for Southern California.
Thank you. Mr. Matthews.
The tunnels plan started off having the bad parts, the tunnels, and some good parts, some environmental concessions that were made. And then the governor decided to split it into two and ask us to take all the bad parts now and put off the good parts until later. No way. We cannot do that. We look like we are heading into perpetual drought. This year we're seeing El Nino coming up against climate change, and unfortunately it looks like climate change is winning. We need to be looking at long-term solutions for what we do if we never have sufficient amounts of water coming down. And we need to be looking at the kinds of things that Mr. Stern was talking about. We need to be looking at conservation and how we deal with runoff. Desalination has been mentioned, but it has a serious environmental problems, and so we need to be very careful about that. We don't really need to go in that direction. We can succeed in doing this with conservation, especially in the agricultural area, where they need to use much better methods and be planting much more logical crops that use less water.
Thank you. Ms. Pollak.
I recently went on an inspection tour of the California Water Project, which includes the Sacramento Delta. And I've told people I worry about an earthquake in Northern California as much as I do in Southern California. And the reason is a lot of our communities are dependent solely on that Sacramento Delta water for their drinking water. In Moore Park, it's about 70%. Thousand Oaks is 100% dependent on imported water. Imported water is a whole other issue. I'll talk about that later if I can. But the tunnels need to go in, and the reason is where the pumps have been put in the south end of the Delta, they never should have been put there to start with. They are having all sorts of ecological effects, like reversing the flow of the rivers that naturally would flow out under the Golden Gate Bridge. When they start those pumps up, it starts sucking things in the other direction, reversing the flow of the river, confusing salmon and the Sacramento smelt and a lot of other things. So the tunnels are an ecological solution. It's to put the inlet up further upstream where it's not going to cause these kind of ecological problems. And I agree we also need to return the Delta to its original marshy state. That's taken 100 years for it to get to where it is now. It's going to take time to get it back.
Thank you. Ms. Resnick.
Given the longevity of this water crisis that we're looking forward to over the next many, many years, I don't think there's a single solution that we can really say is absolutely out of question. We need to look at conservation first and foremost, but we cannot throw out other options because cleaning up the groundwater in the San Fernando Valley, that project's been going on for 40 years. And while it can be expedited, and I'm sure people can do a better job doing it between Boeing, DOE, and Lockheed, they've been working on it for a long time and we're not getting real far, and all the water from the San Fernando Valley is not enough to serve Los Angeles. It just isn't. Right now it's not serving anybody in the valley at all. So that I agree with expediting the valley cleanups. I agree with looking into options to make this tunnel proposal a better proposal, and I don't know what's going to happen with it, but we just can't throw out any option because we are in a very, very serious water crisis. And I do think conservation is what we have the most control of, and we need to change the culture on conserving water.
All right, thank you. Mr. Matthews, what is your position with respect to renewal of permits for Diablo Canyon?
Well, like I said, I wrote the state party position that says that we need to phase out all nuclear power. I have been very active in the fight to shut down the Mark I reactors around the country. Those are the same ones that have the same design as what failed in Japan, and they are a serious risk here. I fought for what we eventually got to shut down San Onofre, and I'm fighting to get Diablo shut down. We need to keep that fight up. We need to keep that pressure. With San Onofre, we ended up getting a break. Edison made a big mistake. They tried to sneak through a design change that they didn't get approved. We leveraged the fact that we had been fighting so that we could actually turn that mistake into a shutdown. We need to keep that same kind of pressure on Diablo because they're going to make a mistake and we're going to get it shut down.
All right, thank you, Mr. Pollard.
I always was hoping that we'd find a safe way to use nuclear power, and it just has never happened. I'm surprised we haven't discovered a way to make nuclear fusion safe. But the concern I have about shutting down Diablo comes from what I saw with San Onofre. It needs to be shut down because it's not safe. I get that. But it was providing 12% of our electricity. Now Southern California Edison, the other utilities, are running around building gas-fired electrical generators, which hurts the environment. So it's, if we're going to do that, we need to invest more in solar power so that we can replace that, because we keep still demanding energy. And that's one of the things that I'm doing with my business practice is I'm working with a company called PFMG Solar, and we're installing solar panel systems all over Southern California, mostly at schools, but also I just got a contract to do the roof of Westlake City Hall, and I understand an RFP is coming out for Malibu as well.
So your position on the renewal of the permits is?
I'm sorry, the decision
On renewal of the permits is?
No, I agree that they should not be renewed, and we need to find alternatives.
Thank you.
I agree with that as well. We must shut down that facility because until we do, I do not think we'll ever really come to the task of creating alternatives. So we need to shut that down. No good is coming of it, no good has come of it. And it's just a major source of problem. And we will find alternatives when our feet are to the fire, we have to. People will make conversion to solar and all the other strategies that our scientists are coming up with to be able to find alternative energy sources.